Thought I'd try to record a little intro to say what this is. So, in this app called Signal, I'm in a kind of a group with my friends Cal and Craig and Mitch and Luke Johnston and Luke Thompson and John Bell, although he's always remained elusive in the background, hasn't said too much yet, but every once in a while it'll pop up. But anyways, so through this app, I was just kind of messaging Cal separately because I was reading in Genesis. I've been in Genesis lately, and we had it in our recent talk. Me and Cal had talked to Peter Hyatt, and Peter Hyatt had mentioned Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. And Mitch has been bringing that verse up a lot too, and this verse has just been coming up for me and sticking out a lot. And so there's this idea of like that it's actually a fractal pattern, like it repeats, and it's more talking about the firstborn and the secondborn. The first I have loved, the first I have hated, the second I have loved. So it just seemed to be a pattern like that. So this is just some clips where I'll try to string them together. I don't even remember what I said necessarily at this point. Hopefully it will make sense, or at least be like provoke some thought into this idea, whatever. But this is just between me and Cal. Going back and forth. I sent him a couple audio clips, and then he responded, I think, with two, which I thought were really, really good. One of them, I think, had a little advice in like how to approach any type of pattern, which I thought was some really good advice. When you come across a pattern, you just kind of let it unfold before you, and watch it reveal more and more instances. Because you can't really take hold of it. If you take hold of it, you kind of you can never kill it, but you would lose it or something. So anyways, too much rambling. I'll just try to string the clips together and let them play out, and hopefully it will at least be interesting. And if you find it interesting, I'd love to pick up the conversation and dig into the idea more and get some better ways to talk about it. So anyways, enjoy it. He mentioned that verse, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. And I think when he said that, I kind of like jumped on it a little bit because it's been coming up for me and kind of on my mind about Esau being more of just an image of the firstborn, the older, and Jacob is the younger. And so it works as like a fractal pattern. The older I have loved, the younger I have loved, the older I have hated. Because you see it skip in the Bible. It's like Abraham I'm pretty sure he marries Hagar. And so his firstborn is Ishmael. And then he has Isaac. And the blessing skips to Isaac. And then Isaac has Esau and Jacob. And the blessing skips to Jacob. And then Jacob is renamed Israel. And then he has, Reuben by Leah is his firstborn. And then he has Joseph by Rachel, the firstborn of hers. So I'm not sure why it works this way, maybe because he has two wives. But when Reuben defiles his bed, then the blessing skips to Joseph. And then Joseph has two sons, and then the blessing skips to the younger, in Ephraim. And it's just like this pattern, it just keeps happening over and over. Then even with Jacob's wives, he marries Leah and Rachel. And Genesis 29, I was just reading verse 30, it says, Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. And then in verse 31, it says, when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, and that same word hated is sane or something. It's S-A-N-E, and that's the same Hebrew word in Malachi, where it says, Jacob I have loved, and Esau I have hated. So there's something incredibly profound here, and I think it works according to the thing in Romans 11, where it's talking about that Israel is committed to disobedience, that God might have mercy on all, and that he might graft in the Gentiles, graft in the younger. It's like the firstborn is rejected. He says, Israel is my firstborn in the Old Testament. I think it's in like when he's talking to Pharaoh in the book of Exodus, he says, give me my son, my firstborn, Israel. And then he rejects Israel and chooses the younger. I don't know. There's something going on here. Yeah, it's extremely interesting because it seems to be happening a lot. And like I say all that, and I do say like that it seems that I'm pretty sure that people have like noticed this before, that the blessing seems to go to the second born. And I don't think that's like a new thing that I'm discovering or anything, but I don't know that anybody's tied it together the way that Peter Hyatt does, or the way that we were that I was trying to hint at with him. I think he was on the same page, and he was saying the same thing, is that it seems to be about the reconciliation of all things, because it's about creation. So if you have creation, it's like there's one and then there's two. And so how does the two get pulled back to the one? And it's like, it's like the prodigal son. It's the same story. It's like the older son, he never necessarily leaves his father's house, but the younger one is the one that receives the blessing. He receives the promise. He receives the love without conditions. They both receive it, but it's the younger one that gets like the revelation of it, and then is able to use that same love to give to his older brother and like bind them all back to the father. And it's like this circular pattern of mercy going out through all creation to redeem all things. And I don't know that it's been seen that way or articulated that way before. And I'm probably doing a terrible job of articulating it, but I think that's kind of what Peter Hyatt was saying. And I'd like to hear him maybe dig into it a little more. I still haven't gone through all this stuff though. You've probably listened to a lot more than me. No freaking way. This is too good, man. So, it's like a pattern. The older I have loved, the older I have hated, the younger I have loved. And then the younger wrestles with the older for the blessing, right? And then, goodness, okay, I'm trying to think of how to do this. It's just too much. And like I brought up before, it's like the spirit is forgiveness or something. And it's like, how does the Trinity work? It works as a fractal pattern of something like forgiveness, and it pulls the two back into one. Like there's a separation, and then there's two through creation, because there should be differences, and one's different than the other, and one's the elder, one's the younger, whatever. And then it's like a pattern, and so it just keeps like applying. You can apply it to almost anything. And then if it's split apart, it's pulled back together through like that unconditional love, like I mentioned, right? And so Jacob wrestles with Esau in the womb, and he takes the blessing. And then he wrestles with the angel and takes hold of the angel and won't let the angel go until he gets the blessing. And then he says to the angel, I've seen your face like I've seen God's face. And then he's reconciled with Esau right afterwards, and Esau forgives him, falls on him, and they weep on each other's neck. Very similar to the prodigal son story. He's received back into Esau's arms as the father receives him back. There's like the spirit of love between them. And then he says to Esau, I've seen your face like I've seen God's face, right? So he wrestles with Esau, he wrestles with the angel. But while he's wrestling with the angel, like if we skip back to that, the angel says to him, your name is Israel. He renames him, and he says, because you have wrestled with God and with man and have prevailed. So that happens, right? And so there's an older and there's a younger, and there's this wrestling and this spirit between them and the spirit between God, whatever's happening there. It's very ambiguous, very mysterious. And so then you have Leah and Rachel, and Leah's older, Rachel's the younger. And I never saw this before, but so Rachel can't have children, she's barren. So she gives her maid to Jacob to have children. He has the first one, which is Dan, which means judge. Then the second one is Naphtali, which means wrestling. And she says, Rachel said, with great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. Isn't that, it's like the same thing the angel says to Jacob when he's wrestling. I don't know. There's just too much going on, man. Let me know what you think. All right. One more thing, which is striking me as, it's always struck me as very mysterious, but this is way more mysterious than I thought now that I'm seeing this pattern of like the older and the younger. But so Rachel sees Reuben, the firstborn now, according to this, like the story. He's now the firstborn. And he's in the field and he has mandrakes. And so Rachel wants his mandrakes. And I don't know what this means. Like, I wish I had more ancient understanding on what this symbol might have meant. I've heard somewhere that it was like a sign of fertility. I'm not sure if that's true. I've also heard it's some sort of like magical herb or like hallucinogenic. I don't know if that's true either. But so anyways, but after she gets the mandrakes, then she conceives and bears Joseph, which is like the second born. Like the blessing passes to Joseph after it skips Reuben. So she's like wrestles with her sister Leah, and then somehow gets a hold of these mandrakes, and then has Joseph, the second son. I don't know, man. Let me know what you think about it. Yeah, there's just a lot there, and I don't know what to do with all of it yet. Okay, you said talk about how this relates to the Church of the Unbelievers. So I'm guessing you asked me to want to expand on this, and I'm not even sure how. Like, I'm still, that's what I mean. Sometimes it feels like my mind is just still lagging, and I'm not quite, like there's still walls or blockers up that are keeping me from seeing these patterns more clearly. But I'm going to try, because I brought up Romans 11, right? So that God has committed all to disobedience that he might have mercy on all. So he commits Israel, you could say, to disobedience so he could graft the Gentiles in, so that through the mercy shown the Gentiles, they will show mercy back to Israel and will show mercy on all. But then, so the Gentiles become the church, and then there's still Gentiles, right? There's still unbelievers, like you're talking about. But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if we've seen it yet. Like, maybe that's what we're waiting for the pattern to hit again, to like repeat again in the church. Kind of what happened with Christ on the cross is going to happen again with the church. I kind of believe so. I don't know what that would look like. But because so you have Israel as like a single man, and then you have a whole nation that is Israel. Then you have Christ that's a single man, and then you have a whole like nation, multitudes of Christians that are Christ, that are his body. And so I don't know, man. I don't know what it's going to look like when the pattern happens again. But it made me think also of, I know I'm just rambling now because I'm really trying to just like, I guess, piece this together. So I'm trying to turn my hand to Ezekiel. I go reference that one too, Ezekiel 16, where he says, because I was talking about the elder and the younger, and it seems to be this pattern of Jacob I have loved, the younger I have loved, but Esau I have hated, the older I have hated. So it's like committing the older to disobedience, the kind of the casting away. I don't know if it's the casting away, but the blessing skips the older and goes to the younger. So it says, let's see, your elder sister is Samaria. In Ezekiel 16, it says that your elder sister is Samaria, who dwells with her daughters to the north of you. Your younger sister, who dwells to the south of you, is Sodom and her daughters. So, if the elder is Israel, Samaria, that was kind of Israel at the time, because there was Samaria and Judah, like it got split up into Israel and Judah. And so, you have the older and the younger there. And right in the middle, but then there's like a third, right? But that's still like the younger. It's the older and the younger, the older, the younger, the older, the younger. It's like a pattern. So you could look at it that way maybe and say Israel committed to disobedience, so that the Christians, I'm not saying this is definitive. Like, I'm just saying the pattern could apply on this. I'm not saying, because if I say it just means this, then the pattern would stop repeating. It would be like, you understand this. It means this, but so like it could apply here of like, so you could say like Israel committed to disobedience, that God would have mercy to the church, which is Judah. But then Judah plays the harlot. But then Judah still has a younger sister. The Christians still have a younger sister, which would be the unbelievers. And that would be Sodom in this case. So Israel committed disobedience that he might have mercy on Judah. The church committed disobedience that he might have mercy on Sodom. the rest of like this perpetual cycle of mercy or something. I don't know. But there's more, like they're right there. There's more talk of the older and the younger. And then in Ezekiel, gosh, where is it? It's got a whole chapter on the two harlot sisters, which is like, could easily apply to Israel in the church. Ezekiel 23, the two harlot sisters. Let's see. Where does it say? Their names, Aholah, the elder, and Aholabah, her sister. So Aholah, Samaria, and Aholabah is Jerusalem. So you have the older and the younger there as well. Sorry, I know I'm going rambling on and on. Probably none of it's making sense. Like, I don't know. Part of me, in that last message, feels almost like I'm stretching it to make the pattern apply so I can make it fit my theology of like the reconciliation of all things, which I truly do believe, but I don't want to be like deceitful or twist scripture to make the pattern apply to my ideas. But I guess I was trying to because I guess I'm trying to see how it could, because I feel like maybe you kind of have to do that in order to try to be watchful, maybe to not to where I'm saying like this is I don't know what I'm getting at. It just feels like I'm kind of maybe like I don't know, I could feel people objecting to that, where I'm like Samaria is Israel, Jerusalem's Christianity, Sodom's unbelievers, and they're all going to be reconciled through this pattern. I mean, that's what I see. That's how it looks to me, but I can't really explain it right. And I feel like just laying out that one little thing in Ezekiel is not enough to maybe back up what seems to be happening. Like you said, the pattern, if it's a pattern, it has lots of instances, and you can point to lots of different instances to point to the pattern or something like that. If I'm quoting you right, I need to get better quoting you.
If you just reacted, that would be limiting reality. If you just identified with your knee-jerk judgment or perception, that would be limiting reality and not doing justice to its nature as infinite. Since it is in ultimate reality, it is ultimate reality, and it is infinite. That is its dialectic. It admits of it is itself and its opposite simultaneously. It admits of the one judgment and also the opposite judgment. So that the final judgment is no judgment, and condemnation is condemned, and that mercy is the judgment. And so this is a creative pattern. Instead of identifying with your first reaction or label or limit or predication, there's some kind of process that must happen before you can become aware of the whole. The process is like a dialectical process of like a first giving rise to a second, and then they struggle, and that begets a third. There is like a kind of thesis antithesis synthesis dynamic, so that the antithesis is necessary to bring about a synthesis, and the synthesis reflects reality of awareness of the whole, and that so reality is moving through cycles of recursion, of becoming aware, becoming self-aware at each sort of cycle.
Okay, so I haven't listened to your messages yet, and I'm sorry. I'm going to go back and listen for a second. Just one more thing. I think I'm done reading for the day at this point, because I think I just need at least the scriptures, because I think I just need, okay, it's going. I think I just need to let it soak or something. I don't know. I don't want to read too much. It's one of those things where like it's kind of all in my head right now, and it feels like I'm out here walking, and it feels like this place where I come out to walk is like one of those thin places that Sherry talked about. Mitch talks about it as well, where it literally feels like angels can talk to you or something. Like you get just the ideas are clearer and everything. And then sometimes I later on, I'm like, what the heck was I even thinking? So maybe it's good to say it now, and maybe it will make sense later, maybe it won't. But anyways, so I probably just need to soak with these ideas, maybe, and meditate on them more as well. But the last thing I wanted to say, sorry, I'm rambling, just not getting to it, is the last thing I just read, it was talking about the genealogy of Esau. And there's this little refrain where it says it at least 3 times, maybe 4 times in that chapter, and it says Esau is Edom. Esau has 2 names, sort of. He has the name Esau, which I think they give him that name because he comes out and he's like a hairy, he's got hair all over, kind of beastly, I don't know, whatever. A little wolf boy, I don't know what you call it. But then when he wants the red stew, there's this idea of red, and he gets it. This is when he goes for the stew with Jacob, and he says, give me some of this red stew. And so then they give him the name Edom, because it means red, like Adam. Adam is named Adam because of the red clay, the red dust of the earth. So there's like a link there between Esau and Adam. So the reason I mentioned that is because Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated. The firstborn, the older I have hated, the younger I have loved. And Craig just asked me this too. He said, is Christ the firstborn or is he the secondborn? And I'm like, he's both, because it's a pattern. Because I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It's like in Egypt, God calls Israel his firstborn. And then his people are constantly being created and constantly being born. So there's always a first, and then there's a second. There's a first and there's a second. There's a first and a second. It's like, if you look at the book of Hebrews, it's like the first covenant and then the second covenant, the first and the second. It just kind of has this weird refrain. But back to 1 Corinthians, mine just kind of jumbled here. It says the first man, Adam, was like a man of flesh, and the last man, Jesus, became a life-giving spirit. So he's the second there, but he's also called the firstborn among many brethren. So it's like Jesus is the second, according to Adam, because Adam is the son of God. If you follow the genealogies, it says Adam in the Gospels. When it says Adam, he's the son of God, and Jesus is also the son of God. So it's a pattern, and now Jesus is the firstborn among many brethren. And it's interesting to think about what that might mean, but I'm not sure how to talk about any of that yet, or what to think necessarily.